Hello there. How are you? We are so glad that you have joined us today for the Wonder Years. What is the Wonder Years about? Well, things have changed, especially since COVID, and the nature. Actually, our way of life has changed, and people do value more about their life. Um, I work with lawyers, and being a boomer, that's the only thing that we focused on. Was we focused on work and providing for our family, and we kind of missed a lot of things along the way. So the Wonder Years is really a strategy that wants to help each lawyer look at their lives as an entire group. Let me just see here. An entire organic thing, which is our personal or professional, our health, avocations, things that we want to do. So we have all of those things. And so that's where we have the Wonder Years. And we want to emphasize on reducing stress, enhancing freedom, making more money for working less. I'm all for this all the time. Not being chained to the billable hour and building a thriving legacy. Today, we're very honored because we get to have our guest, Bruce Simpson. And Bruce has a very unique story, a very special story, because we do know that depression and suicidal ideations, anxiety, chronic stress are big issues in the legal profession. So I'm going to bring Bruce up onto our stage. Hello, Bruce. How are you?
Good morning, Pamela. How are you?
I'm so glad that you're here. I'm
I
doing
am
really
too.
well. Yes. So Bruce has a very unique story. And Bruce, if you could tell us before we get into, the actual time of that you made an attempt on your life, tell us a little bit about how you felt about therapy and mental health and all of those things.
Surely. Well, I'm an attorney, as you say. I've been practicing law for 41 years. I'm a trial lawyer, represent plaintiffs, individuals in various kinds of civil litigation. And in terms of mental health treatment, up until about a year ago, I was very disparaging of it. I didn't, quite frankly, believe it had any efficacy, if you will. I didn't believe going to see a therapist would do any good. How are they going to talk me out of feeling bad about myself? That was one issue. The second issue was I didn't believe I had a mental health problem. I thought I had a Bruce Simpson personal inadequacy problem that I'd been suffering from since I was a little boy, that I'd just been coping with inappropriately for most of my life. And so I had no confidence in mental health treatment. I was the ultimate doubting Thomas, if you will, about seeing somebody about that. And I was wearing a cloak of a lawyer, this macho bullshit image, if you will, that gets people in trouble, I think, from time to time. And so that was part of it. And then just the stigma. I didn't want to think of myself as having a mental health problem. Quite frankly, I confess that I mocked people that had mental health problems because I really blamed them for their own demise, their own malaise. I was very insensitive, and obviously, I was wrong.
Okay, okay. So tell us your journey and how you came to find a need to get help and also to protect yourself and your family.
Surely. Um, as I said, for most of my life, starting when I was a little boy, I never felt worthy. I was never, quote unquote, good enough. And I internalized that my entire life. And even though I, went to law school, and one would think you would have some self respect or some appreciation of self worth because of that. internally, I thought I was still never good enough. I really wasn't smart enough. I was faking people out. I later learned I was suffering from something called imposter syndrome. And I felt really bad about myself, quite frankly, and until my early 40s when people would tell me, Bruce, hey, I mean, I saw that trial, man, you did a good job. And I'm like, really? And they said, yeah, you did well. I saw it on television. I'm like, no kidding. So I didn't let it go to my head. I didn't, walk around full of myself, but it made me feel good for the first time in my life. And I would need to get a compliment like that ever so often, or a bad day would be a catastrophic day for me. I'd be curled up in bed 3 days faking a stomach ache or something. And, my wife and family just thought it was, you know, stomach aches. And at least I thought they did. Anyway, once I started feeling good about myself, when I would read about lawyers that got into trouble for one reason or another, they stole money from a client or committed a criminal act or something. And not that I'd ever pictured myself doing that. No, but to see their name in the newspaper and held up humiliation and ridicule, once I started feeling good about myself, only because other people told me I was a good lawyer, I just thought to myself, man, if that was me, I'd kill myself. I couldn't bear the shame of having to endure that humiliation. And the truth of the matter is, for 30 years, I was prepared to kill myself in the event that I ever lost or perceived I would lose the reputation people told me that I had. And so I remember one time my wife and I took a cruise about 20 years ago to Scandinavia, and I had this notion about halfway across the Atlantic Ocean that I might have missed the statute of limitations in a case. And lawyers have these things pop up in their heads all the time. But I thought, well, I don't want to think about this. I'm on this vacation, but it kept popping up in my head, and it was 15 or 20 times a day. And the only way that I found to cope with that and not ruin the trip for my wife was to tell myself, look, if you messed up on this case and you hurt these people, just kill yourself when you get home. It'll be all over. You don't have to worry about it. I was entirely comfortable with death, self-inflicted death, for 30 years, as bizarre as that sounds. And I know it sounds bizarre, but I didn't accept I had a mental health problem. I didn't know that I had one because I'd never been diagnosed or seen anybody. And then in January of 2023, I read the mail and a decision that I got from the Court of Appeals in a high-profile case that I'd won. It got a lot of publicity. It was an upset win. I was tickled to death for my clients. They were great people, and I read in the opinion that I had not filed a brief in the case. And I thought to myself, what do you mean I didn't file a brief? Of course I did. I filed a brief. I won this case. Why would I not file a brief? But about a year earlier, I'd had some health issues, and I had fallen and sustained a brain bleed. I was in ICU for a couple of weeks, in and out of the hospital, and I didn't know I had a short-term memory impairment that came about from all of that. I knew I was a little slow, but I didn't know I had a serious problem until it was too late, until I read in the opinion where I had forgotten to file a brief in this high-profile case. And I mean, automatically I knew, because I'd been thinking and contemplating death for 30 years, that, okay, well, it's my time to go. And I wrote a note to my family. My wife had left early for work. I went to a gun store. I bought a powerful gun, a .357 Magnum revolver with hollow point bullets, and took a cemetery down to a cemetery where my grandparents are buried, about 12 miles from Lexington, Kentucky, where I currently live, my hometown. I got out of the Uber and walked around and thought to myself, really, Simpson, is this how your life is going to end? Is this how you want to be remembered? And then I thought, I was kind of hesitant, but then I said, well, maybe I better test fire the weapon, make sure it works. It's a brand new gun, but I hadn't fired a gun since I was in the Army years ago. And so I test fired it. It was a revolver. I saw the bullet rotate into the chamber, pull the trigger, and it was loud. Dogs started barking all over the cemetery. I figured the people were going to be coming out, So I called 911 and because I was planning on doing that and I told him, I said to the dispatcher, there's a body in the cemetery. And she asked where, and I told her. She said, will you be there to assist the officer? And I said, yes. And she said the officer's en route. So I knew I had a limited amount of time to finish my mission, and I was locked on like I do for a trial. And so I removed the spent casing from the bullet that had fired. I didn't have to, but I didn't want to make any mistakes. I'd planned this for 30 years, and I put the spent casing in my pocket. I pulled the hammer back on the gun. I saw the next bullet rotate into the chamber, and I put the gun to the side of my head, and I pulled the trigger. And the hammer hit the bullet, and the bullet didn't fire. And I was dumbfounded, absolutely dumbfounded. Like, what the hell happened? And then I saw the police car coming in the gate of the cemetery, and I was going to go ahead and try it again, but I thought, wait a minute, I can't shoot myself while the police officer's coming towards me. So I put it in my pocket, and he didn't see me do that. And he pulled up next to me and rolled the window down, and I had no lies, really. I had no contingencies. Usually I have contingencies as a lawyer for everything, but I had none. I was supposed to be dead. And so I said, I'm sorry. It was, I stammered and stuttered, and I said, it was a garbage bag. It wasn't a body. And so he said, thanks. I said, I'm sorry you had to come out. He said, no problem. But then he drove off, but he didn't leave the cemetery, and it was cold. It was January. It was 22 degrees. And anyway, I milled around for a while, and I didn't have nowhere to go. I had no car. There wasn't any place to get warm. And anyway, I wound up calling another lawyer that I knew in Nicholasville, and I didn't tell him what I was down there to do, but he came and we talked, and I told him my wife and I had an argument, and I didn't tell him while we were sitting there in that bar. I had a loaded .357 minus one bullet in my pocket, but he said, I said, just take me back to the gas station, which is where he picked me up right across from the cemetery, and I said, I'll take an Uber back. And so he about 11 o'clock at night, we went back. I got ready to get out of the car, and he said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to get an Uber. He said, I'll wait. I said, man, it's 11. Go on home. I'm fine, really. I'm going home. I wanted to go back to the cemetery and finish what I came to do. I didn't tell him that, but I tried to get out of his car 3 more times that night. And each time he said, I must wait. I'll wait. And finally, I knew there wasn't going to be an Uber coming because I didn't call an Uber. I wanted to kill myself. I was locked on like I am a case. And like I said, I've been thinking about this for 30 years. If my reputation ever gotten threatened, and it was just my time. It was just business, really. And so finally, he said, come on, I'll take you home. So he took me back to Lexington. We come over the hill to my neighborhood, and there's 5 or 6 police cars in front of my house. And he looked at me and said, what the hell is going on? I said, again, I had no lies. I had nothing to make up that sounded sensible. I said, I guess Cindy's upset about something. He said, well, I reckon. What'd you do? I said, I didn't do nothing. You know me, I'd never hit a woman. I said, I don't know. I was just falling all over myself. I said, don't stop, because I don't want to be tackled in my front yard with a loaded weapon in my pocket. So he drove up about 1.5 miles away and got ready to get out. I got ready to get out. He grabbed my arm, and the reason the police were there is my wife had found the note. She had called the police. The police had actually pinged my phone in the cemetery where I was, and I saw her calling. I saw my brothers calling, my partners, but I didn't want to talk to anybody. I'd reached the point of no return. This was going to happen, and nobody was going to talk me out of what I was going to do. And so I turned my phone off. When I turned my phone off, the police couldn't find me anymore, and they couldn't locate me. And so they were at my house for 5 hours. And anyway, Bruce let me out about 1.5 miles away. My Bruce Smith, a friend of mine that picked me up, I talked to, he said, you're going to walk home, right? And I said, yeah, I'm good. But I was still going to finish it. And I walked down into this large detention basin in my neighborhood, and it was dark. It was about 11:30 at night. And I pulled the gun out for the final time. And then I thought, wait a minute, he just drove 12 miles home, and you told him you're walking home. Now you're going to kill yourself. mean, think about how that's going to impact him. And so I thought, well, hell, I guess I'll have to wait a couple of days. And so I started walking out of that detention basin. And what I'm about to say, I didn't have a comfort level of even sharing this up until January of this year, my 1 year anniversary of attempted suicide, because I held it back because once I started feeling better and I knew I wanted to let other people know that mental health treatment works. I wanted to have some belief in my credibility that I've been there, and I don't want you to go there. And I'm not making any money off of this. I don't charge for this. It's not like a lawyer puts attempted suicide and then he's been suffering from mental illness for most of his life on his website and expect to draw clients. So I'm not doing it for any other reason than I don't want anybody to go down that dark passage that I took. And that's why I'm talking with you, and I appreciate the invitation. But coming out of that base, and just to finish up, and I believe in trying cases to juries, I've always told the truth, the whole truth, and I make arguments. And the other thing is, no one could have been more of a doubting Thomas about not only mental health treatment, but God. Honestly, I mean, I believe God was there, kind of, but my first name is Thomas, by the way. My middle name is Bruce, and I thought, well, I don't know. There's no actual proof. I don't know if I could authenticate the Bible in a courtroom and get it admitted into evidence and all this other stuff. And so anyway, coming out of that basin, I'm going to wait a couple of days, and I get to about the top of the ridge. And this is the stuff: be skeptical, roll your eyes, whatever. Put me under truth serum. I'll take a lie detector test. I want to be helpful. And what I'm going to tell you is the truth. I get to the top of that basin, and I have this all-encompassing sense of peace and comfort that just takes over my body. My anxiety is gone, and inside my head, I hear a comforting messenger say, Bruce, you're not going to kill yourself. You're going to be okay, and you're going to be equipped to handle the aftermath of your suicide attempt. You're going to be fine. And the truth of the matter is, I've been fine ever since. Now, I've needed mental health treatment. I've needed it. I'm still in therapy, and I'm still on medication. Only first time in my life. So I walk back home. I'm going to skip the part of my wife and I meeting because it's it's difficult for me to get through that part. But she called the police, told them I was back. The police came. I told them I'm fine, really. I didn't tell them I pulled the trigger, and I tried multiple times to get out of my friend's car to finish my mission. I didn't tell them about the detention basin. I just said I changed my mind, and because I knew if I said anything about pulling the trigger, I was gone to state psychiatric hospital, and I didn't want to go. But they said, look, you went and bought a weapon, you've got bullets, you went to the cemetery, you wrote a note to your family, we got to take you in. So all the things that I never imagined happening to me in my life was being put up against the wall in my living room in front of my family and patted down for weapons, put in handcuffs, taken outside, and lodged in the back of a police cruiser in front of my family and my neighbors. But I did, and I'm on the way to Eastern State Hospital, which is the oldest continuous mental hospital in the United States, 200 years. And I made fun of that place all my life, as a little boy growing up, even as an adult. The people in it, the people that worked there. But there I was, headed there. Midnight, they put me in an unlocked room. I was there 3 days. They checked on me every 15 minutes. They unlocked the bathroom for me to use the bathroom, and they had to be in the shower when I took a shower. And I met my first mental health professional, a Dr. Donald Crow, a gentleman actually about my age. First time I'd ever talked with a mental health professional. And honestly, we talked. He spent a lot of time with me in those 3 days, and we went into my history, my childhood, and all these things, and did some cognitive testing and found out that because of the brain bleed, I did have a cognitive memory impairment. And he recommended that I later be followed up at the University of Kentucky medical center, which I was, and they confirmed it. And but then they put me on treatment and said, in 18 months, if you're right, take vitamins, get rest, and this medication, you'll probably gain most of your memory, short-term memory back. And I have. But then I started mental health therapy after I got out of the hospital. I went and met with my clients, apologized to them for malpractice, and I gave them told them the statute of limitations for to sue me for my mistake. And then I reported it to the Bar Association, the Kentucky Bar Association, which regulates lawyer conduct. And as I got better, I wanted to. I felt like I'm going down the road at night and cross a bridge, and all of a sudden that bridge is collapsed, and my wheels are hanging on the edge of the cliff. But I managed to crawl to safety. I feel like anybody. I'm not. I don't consider myself special at all. I don't consider myself courageous at all. I feel like any decent human being would, if they had that situation and it did manage not to go over that cliff, they'd run back up the road and flag somebody and say, "Hey, there's a safer route over here. It's called mental health treatment." And so I was the proverbial doubting Thomas, the negative naysayer about God and mental health. I'm not anymore. I need mental health. Mental health treatment works. Medication works. You got to be adjusted to it. But I tell anybody, and I'm available. I've talked with 6 lawyers since my story came public in the newspaper about 9 months ago. That were contemplating suicide, 4 that had a plan, 2 that were in the process of executing their plan, 1 that was actually in the parking lot of a gun shop. And, it's a first priority for me. I said, look, just give me 5 minutes. Let's talk. Or let me come and meet you for a coffee or a beer or something. I said, I'm not a therapist. I don't pretend to hold myself out as a therapist, but I've been to a place you do not want to go. It is an awful place. And just let me share with you some of the things that have helped me. And let's just talk one human being to the next, because I've learned that helps. And then, you get the therapy from the professionals that you need to see. But sometimes we need a little encouragement. And, I had to be handcuffed and taken against my will to a mental hospital to get the treatment that I needed. But I got it, and I'm alive because of it. So I'm grateful, and I'm here to share whatever value that my story has for other people that are, and I know they're suffering in silence. We do it. I've talked with too many people that suffer in silence because of the stigma. If you've got a stomach ache or COVID or you can't breathe that's serious enough, you're going to see a doctor. Mm-hmm. But if you're suffering from, like, Bruce Simpson personal inadequacy problem that's defined for yourself, depression or whatever else you may have, depression, you're just as likely not to see anybody because of the stigma. I didn't want to be thought of as mentally ill. I didn't want to thought, when I got out of ICU for my brain bleed, my doctor said, Bruce, you've been through a lot of trauma, man. How about, seeing somebody? I'm like, seeing somebody? Like a psychiatrist or somebody? Well, yeah. I'm like, hell no, me? I don't need no psychiatrist. Are you kidding me? No, I was insulted. I mean, it was all just macho bullshit. I'm sorry about my language, but sometimes you've got to, just say it. And for the men out there, particularly, set all that crap aside, man. I mean, go see somebody, because you can be helped. And if you have any doubts, call me. I've got my number on my Twitter, my Facebook page, and LinkedIn account. It's out there. You want to talk because you're in the depths of hell? I've been there. I'll talk to you. I'm not going to give any therapy or anything, but I'll talk, because honestly, Pamela, I should not be talking to you based on everything that I could control about me. And I tell you, I've done trials for 41 years. I'm always prepared. When I go to a courtroom, I am ready to rock. Mm-hmm. And I planned my suicide for 30 years. I was ready to execute it. There was no mistakes that were going to be made. That's why I took that empty shell out of the casing, even though that casing already passed the firing chamber. I double, triple check myself. So I know I shouldn't be here, but I am. And I don't want anybody else to go down that road. I mean, there's no need to go there. There's no need.
Bruce, oh gosh, I am so moved by your story. and so grateful that you share this with people out there, because you and I both know that there's so many that are out there suffering, and because of the stigma, because of pride, because of prejudice against mental therapy and things like that, they just continue to suffer. I've talked to them myself. I've worked with them myself. So Bruce has his number there for you. You know, even if there's like one or two of you out there, listen to this as many times as you need to. Call Bruce, and he will just reach a hand out. There's nothing, you know, like you could go to therapists, you could go to therapy, but there's nothing like talking to someone who's in your shoes, who's walking in your moccasins. And this is the value and the gift that Bruce is giving us all today. Um, I personally,
I will say, if I can interrupt, I will say, without coming across like a televangelist who I don't like, Pamela, the gift is not mine. The gift is from God. I'm just
yeah,
a struggling lawyer, okay, human
mhm,
being, but I'm here. My number is 859-229-3436. For those of you that live up north that don't understand a Southern accent, I'll try to speak a little bit more
could you say
clearly,
the
if you
number again,
will.
Bruce? Could you say the number again?
859-229-3436. If
Yeah,
I wasn't serious, I wouldn't put my number out there.
right.
Okay.
Mhm.
But I don't want anybody going to that. I've been to a place no human being need venture. I
Right,
mean, it just,
right.
so I'm grateful. And it's that, it's my time to pay it forward. That's it. Nothing more. Nothing.
Thank,
That's it.
thank you, Bruce. Thank you, all of you who've come to our LinkedIn Live, and most of you will probably listen to it later during the day in the next few days because it'll be here online. So thank you, Bruce, and thank you, everyone who's been here.
Thank you, panel. Appreciate it.
Yes. Okay, I have to hold on.